Have you noticed how he falls silent when your eyes meet unexpectedly? The way his attention fixes on you across a crowded room? How his friends exchange knowing glances when you walk in? These aren't coincidences. They're glimpses into what Carl Jung called the unconscious mind, where his deepest feelings live before he can even name them. While you're trying to decode his mixed signals and wondering if he cares, his unconscious has already recognized something profound about you. Something that changes his breathing when you're near. Something that draws him back even when he tries to maintain distance. Something his rational mind hasn't processed yet, but his soul already understands completely. The fascinating truth is that men often fall in love at a deeper level than even they realize. Their bodies, their behaviors, their unconscious choices tell a story their words haven't caught up with yet. And once you learn to read these silent signals, you'll see the truth that's been hiding in plain sight all along. Most women mistake silence for disinterest, distance for indifference. But what if the truth is exactly the opposite? What if his hesitation isn't about feelings that don't exist, but about emotions so powerful they've overwhelmed his ability to process them? This isn't about text messages or surface-level dating games. We're going to dive deep into what Jung called the language of the soul, the authentic ways a man expresses love before his conscious mind has even named it. And before we continue, I want you to pay attention to each signal, because the most valuable clues aren't found in grand gestures, but in the quiet transformation of his inner world when you enter it. When a man's soul recognizes yours, his entire being shifts in ways neither of you may fully understand yet. And that's exactly what we're exploring today. There's a transformation that happens in a man when he's touched by a woman who resonates with something deep inside him. It's not always visible at first glance. It's subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniably powerful. Jung believed that true emotions aren't processed through our logical, conscious mind. They emerge from a deeper place, what he called the unconscious. And when a man is profoundly affected by your presence, his unconscious begins to speak a language more honest than his words. You might notice it first in his attention. Not the showy kind that's meant to impress or that asks for something in return. It's attention that notices the small things, how your voice sounds different when you're tired, how you've changed your hair even though you didn't mention it, how your energy shifts when something is bothering you that you haven't spoken about. This kind of attention doesn't come from strategy. It comes from connection. His unconscious has already recognized something in you that his conscious mind is still processing. And that recognition creates an awareness that goes beyond the surface. He might not need to see you every day, but you'll notice that you appear in his thoughts at unexpected moments. He remembers things you mentioned in passing. He follows up on conversations you had weeks ago, not because he's trying to prove something, but because you've become a part of his internal landscape. Jung would say that your energy has touched something inside him, awakening a response he can't fully explain even to himself. And there's something else that becomes visible when a man is affected this way. His behavior changes when he's with you, and only with you. With others, he maintains his usual patterns. But in your presence, something shifts. Maybe he becomes more genuine, more vulnerable. Maybe he allows himself to be less guarded, less perfect. Because real connection doesn't make us more polished. It makes us more human. If you've noticed these subtle shifts, if you've felt the weight of his attention even when it's not accompanied by words, you're experiencing the first signs of an unconscious attachment that runs deeper than casual interest. There are moments when a man doesn't need to say anything for his energy to reveal what's happening inside him. It's as if his very presence speaks a language all its own. Jung observed that when we're deeply affected by someone, our body responds before our mind has time to intervene. Look for the unconscious gestures, how his breathing changes when you enter a room, how his voice softens when he speaks only to you, how his body naturally turns toward you even in a crowded space. These aren't conscious choices, They're instinctive responses to an emotional current that's already flowing beneath the surface of his awareness. Pay attention to how he reacts when your name comes up in conversation. When someone else mentions you, does his attention immediately sharpen? When you're praised, does his expression change? When you're criticized, does something defensive flash across his face? These split-second reactions reveal what his heart has already decided, even if his mind is still catching up. Jung said that the unconscious protects what it values. And when a man begins to care about your well-being in ways that go beyond logical explanation, it's because something in him has already recognized your importance. He starts to worry about small things. Whether you got home safely, whether you're eating properly, whether you're warm enough when it's cold outside. It's not control or possessiveness. It's the natural response of a soul that has already connected with yours at a level deeper than words can express. His unconscious has already included you in his definition of what matters, what needs protection, what deserves care. And perhaps most revealing is how he behaves when you're not looking. When he thinks no one is watching, does he steal glances in your direction? Does he orient himself in a room so he can see you? Does he find reasons to be near you without making it obvious? These aren't calculated strategies. They're unconscious gravitational pulls that he may not even be aware of. Jung would call this the soul's recognition, that inexplicable knowing that happens before rational understanding. If you've noticed these resonances, if his energy seems to respond to yours in ways that words haven't yet captured, you're witnessing something profound. It's the language of the unconscious, speaking what his conscious mind hasn't yet formed into thoughts. There is a particular kind of surrender that happens when a man's soul recognizes yours. It's not the surrender of defeat, but the surrender of walls coming down, of defenses that no longer feel necessary. Jung taught that our deepest connections aren't formed through our carefully crafted personas, but through the courage to reveal our authentic selves. And when a man begins to show you parts of himself that he normally keeps hidden, it's a form of unconscious trust that speaks volumes about what's happening beneath the surface. You might notice it in the stories he shares with you, not just everyday anecdotes, but glimpses into his fears, his doubts, his mistakes, his dreams, the parts of his history that shaped him, the vulnerabilities he usually protects. When he begins to reveal these fragments, it's not because he's suddenly become more talkative. It's because something in him feels safe with you in a way he can't rationalize. And there's a particular quality to the silence you share. Not all silence is the same. There's uncomfortable silence, awkward silence, distant silence. But there's also the silence of two souls that don't need constant words to feel connected. When you can sit together without speaking and it feels like communication rather than its absence, you're experiencing one of the deepest forms of unconscious bonding. What's particularly telling is how he handles your emotions. Jung believed that emotional attunement is one of the clearest signs of soul recognition. When a man is unconsciously connected to you, he develops an intuitive sense of your emotional state. He doesn't need you to explain that you're upset. He feels it. He doesn't require you to ask for comfort. He offers it naturally. Not because he's trying to be perfect, but because your emotional world has become intertwined with his in a way that transcends conscious effort. He feels what you feel. Your joy becomes his joy. Your pain triggers his protective instincts. Your anxiety activates his desire to provide safety. This emotional resonance isn't something he can fake or manufacture. It's the natural result of an unconscious bond that has already formed, even if he hasn't yet found the words to describe it. If you're finding value in what I share, I'd love to have you join our community. Consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss future insights. I create these videos to help you understand the deeper currents in your relationships, and having you as part of this journey means a lot. Now let's continue exploring these powerful, unconscious signals. When a man's soul has recognized yours, his inner landscape begins to shift in ways that even he may not fully comprehend. Jung called this process psychic reorganization, when someone's presence in our lives changes how we see ourselves and our place in the world. One of the most profound signs of this transformation is how he begins to include you in his vision of the future. Not necessarily through explicit statements or promises, but through the natural way you appear in his thoughts about what's ahead. You might notice it in casual comments. "That's a place I'd like to visit someday," with an unspoken assumption that you might be there too. Or in how he considers your opinion when making decisions that affect his path forward. Not because he needs your approval, but because he's unconsciously creating a future where your perspectives matter. Jung believed that the unconscious mind doesn't distinguish between the present and the future in the same way our conscious mind does. When someone has become important to our unconscious, they become part of our projected path forward, even before we've consciously decided to include them. Another powerful sign is how his values and priorities begin to shift. Things that once seemed unimportant to him suddenly matter. Issues he never paid attention to become significant. Not because he's trying to impress you or become someone he's not, but because your presence in his life has awakened new dimensions of himself. This is what Jung meant when he said that love is a force for individuation, the process of becoming our most complete selves. When a man loves deeply, even unconsciously, he begins to grow in ways he never would have without that connection. Not because you're changing him, but because something in your presence allows him to access parts of himself that were always there but dormant. And perhaps most telling is how he behaves when you're not around. Does he keep you in his thoughts? Does he save experiences to share with you later? Does he mention you in conversations with others when there's no obvious reason to? These aren't conscious strategies. They're evidence that you've become integrated into his internal world in a way that transcends your physical presence. Jung understood something crucial about human connection, that our intuition often perceives what our rational mind hasn't yet processed. If you've sensed a depth of feeling that hasn't been expressed in words, if something in you recognizes an attachment that goes beyond what has been acknowledged, trust that perception. The unconscious doesn't communicate in clear declarations or logical statements. It speaks through energy, through resonance, through the unmistakable sense that something significant is happening beneath the surface. Your intuition isn't making things up. It's reading signals that are too subtle for your conscious mind to fully articulate. What makes this kind of connection so powerful is that it isn't built on performance or conscious effort. It's not about someone trying to win you over or impress you. It's about an authentic recognition that happens at the level of being, the kind of recognition that transforms someone's internal world without them even realizing it's happening. When a man's unconscious has recognized you in this way, his actions will show a consistency that words alone never could. Not the flashy consistency of grand gestures, but the quiet consistency of someone whose soul has already made a decision that his mind is still processing. You'll see it in how he returns to you, even after distance, in how he remembers the small details that matter to you, in how he naturally adjusts to make space for your presence in his life. Not because he's following a strategy, but because something in him has already recognized that you matter in a way he may not fully understand yet. Jung taught that the most profound connections don't announce themselves with certainty. They reveal themselves through the subtle alchemy of changed priorities, shifted perspectives, and the gravitational pull that brings two people back to each other, even when logic offers no explanation. If you've witnessed these silent testimonies, if his energy speaks what his words haven't yet formed, trust what you're sensing. Because in the space between the spoken and the felt, between the acknowledged and the lived, lies the most authentic truth of how he feels. Sometimes the heart recognizes its home long before the mind has found the words to name it. And in that recognition lives a love more powerful than any declaration could express. a love that has transformed him from within, even if he's only beginning to understand just how deeply you've touched his soul. The unconscious doesn't lie. And when it speaks through changed behavior, through consistent presence, through the silent language of unwavering attention, it's telling you everything you need to know. That he is, indeed, more in love with you than he himself imagines.